If you're a dad, an uncle, or a grandpa, if you're somebody who wants to make a youth bow, if you're a youth who wants to make a youth bow, today I'm going to show you how to do it. Quick and easy. The bow we're building today can be completed with only hand tools. Additionally, this style can be scaled down for a 2-year-old or scaled up for an adult. Start with a hickory board and cut it down to the height of your child. If you're an adult doing this, cut it to your shoulder. The reason we go to the height of the child is because they're going to be able to grow into the bow a little bit and use it longer than 3 days. I'd like to focus on the end result, where you need to go. How you get there and what tools you use is up to you. You see, my oldest son just turned 4 years old, and this was his previous bow that I built him. This one's an all fiberglass bow, and this is going to be a hand-me-down for my younger son. But I built this so that it would be impossible to break. You can see I can pull the string off and it's totally fine. The issue is that he's outgrown this. And his draw length has gotten so long that the other day, for the first time, he went to full draw and the string literally pulled off. And simultaneously, completely unplanned, a subscriber sent me some arrows he built. And I believe Kaz is working with this guy to sell these through Shatterproof. But now that I've got some awesome arrows for Fletch, I must build him an awesome bow. But before you make a bow for your loved one, you want to make sure that they're hydrated with Element, because Element's sponsoring today's video, and it's the best electrolyte drink you can possibly have. Why is it the best? Because it's good for you and it's delicious. Now, depending on how many of my videos you've seen, you know I use Element for years. I've used them for so long because it's so good. I was a customer for 3 years before they sponsored a single video. My biggest hobby outside of archery is running. I'm slow, but I can go for a long time. And I take Element on every single run. Because they have the perfect blend of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. You see, hydration doesn't just come from water. Like when you sweat out all the sodium, and you need to replace it properly. And it is a night and day difference from when I just have water to when I have Element mixed with water. If you like fruity flavors, I'd recommend you try out grapefruit or their watermelon. Those are my absolute favorite. Additionally, Element's teamed up with me to give you the best deal possible to get started, because right now, Element's offering you a free sample pack with any order. So go get that grapefruit or that watermelon, or if you like a different type of flavor, try out their chocolate. And you'll get 8 free sample packs with this so that you'll be able to try out so many flavors and find what hits the spot perfectly for you. Get yours at drinkelement.com/Kramer. This deal is only available through my link, so check it in the description, drinkelement.com/Kramer. Thank you, Element, for supporting my channel. Now, let's build this bow. Maybe the only thing more fun than making a bow is making a bow for a purpose. I started making bows because I wanted a hunting bow, and I would imagine going hunting with the bow as I was building it. It was a very direct correlation between the purpose and the use case of it and my intention for building it. The same things happen to me when I've built a bow for gifts. It is one of the most pleasurable ways to build a bow because you're thinking of the person you care about. You're thinking of their reaction. You're thinking of them being able to use it, to shoot it. And that makes it so much more fun to make a bow. Mark the center of the board. Mark 4 inches on each side of center. This 8-inch area is the handle. Now make your handle 1.5 inches wide. Correction, make it 1 1/4 down to 1/2 inch. We do not need a lot of limb width because of the lower draw weight. At the limb tip, we're gonna mark the center and then mark 1/4 inch on either side of the center because we're gonna have a 1/2 inch limb tip. Connect the dots with a straight edge. Now we have our limb profile. Cut out the profile however you would like. Now that our profile is cut out, we need to reduce the thickness. The thickness is what determines how heavy the bow is to draw back. The stronger of a bow you want, the more thickness you want to leave. For youth bows, reduce this down to 1/2 inch as a starting point. As you reduce the thickness, keep the handle full thickness. We're making great progress. Here's the little stave so far, but it's much, much too stiff, especially with the 1/2 inch for a small bow like this one. Think of it this way, the shorter the bow is, the more the thickness does to the limbs. So a 1/2 inch bow at 72 inches long may be a 40-pound bow, but a 1/2 inch bow at 40 inches long is like a 100-pound bow. So the shorter your bow is, the thinner your limbs will need to be. Since mine's quite short, we need to reduce it quite a bit. But first note that our 8-inch handle is a finish of 6 inches because we take 1 inch to fade from the handle to the limb. I don't know if you'll need to reduce the material more, but for this one, I'm gonna reduce it down to about 1/5 of an inch. Next, clean up the rough edges with sandpaper. Optional, but I'm adding tip overlays. This will make it look good. All this is an extra piece of wood or material just to create some contrast, a little bit of an accent. Some CA glue will do. And for speed, an accelerator. Only got a couple seconds, so be quick with that. Otherwise, you could use CA glue without accelerator, or wood glue, or any glue, or no tip overlays. But here's the thing, some of bow making is functionality. Another part of it's kind of the looks. And I like my bows to look good. So I'm gonna do a fingertip overlay as well, which is just a piece that's gonna go here on the back of the handle, and I'm gonna fade it in. This will tie the tip overlays to the handle and add a lot of character to what is just a single piece of wood. Cut down to 6 inches, and the thickness doesn't matter. Glue it on the same way we did the tip overlays. Good coverage. It'd be a shame to make an ugly bow and pair it with such beautifully handcrafted arrows. So let's make the bow worthy of the arrows. With the glue cured, we can just clean everything up. The thickness of this piece doesn't matter. Fade the fingertip overlay in, match the width of the tip overlay to the limb, and just smooth and round everything over. Let's shape the tip overlays next. Mark down 1/2 inch on the top, 1.5 inches on the side, and connect those dots. Then we just need to remove the material. I tried out a new method this time. I used a hacksaw to follow that pencil line precisely. It worked fine to establish the edge, but not a whole lot easier than the normal way I do it with a chainsaw file. But by using chisels, chainsaw files, sandpaper, rasps, you can cut in these grooves. You want to make both sides of the limb even and then cut into the back as well. If you do not use a tip overlay, cut the 2 side grooves in, but do not cut into the back of the bow. Make everything even and you're good to go. This method here is how I normally do it, with the file the entire time and then chisel out the excess. Pay attention to the depth of your cut. On both sides, you want it just deep enough that the bowstring lays in it nice and clean and flat, but you don't want one side deeper than the other. And then on the belly of the bow, you want your 2 grooves to match up evenly. This will help avoid limb twist. I'm using a tillering stick to aid in the tillering. This is an easy one I made from a 2x4 with a couple screws. The idea is that you have some way to pull down the bow. It can rest in place, you can step back and see how it's bending. I put a loose string on, called a tillering string, to start bending this youth bow and start seeing where I need to remove material. For this build, since it's a straight bow, I'm gonna use a tillering gizmo. This is a little piece of wood with a pencil protruding through. And as you rub this on the belly of the bow, the pencil will only touch the parts that is bending less, because the 2 edges of the gizmo is touching the limbs. Basically, this marks exactly where the bow is bending the least amount, therefore showing you where you need to remove wood. I use a cabinet scraper to remove wood because I can remove paper-like shavings easily. So to get the bow to bend properly, I'll use the Tillering gizmo, the Tillering tree, and a scraper. In between each time that I remove material, I'll exercise the limbs. I'll pull them a little bit to make them lose their previous memory. Then I'll remark where to remove material with the Tillering gizmo, and I'll repeat the process. Additionally, to avoid limb twist, measure the left and right sides of the limbs and mark which side is thicker. You want the thickness of each individual limb to be the same. So I'll remove wood here just on one singular side to get them to match up perfectly. This is gonna create a fun, fast shooting bow with zero problems. Continue this process until the poundage or the draw weight is what you're looking for. Now let's shape the handle to our liking. First, I'm gonna take the center mark, the middle mark. That's where the hand's gonna go. The arrow rest will go 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches above that. Make it a smaller distance for these smaller bows. And an adult bow, I generally do 1.25 inch above the center of the handle for the arrow rest. A quick rough layout, and we're good to start shaping the handle. I first start by cutting in the arrow shelf. I want an arrow shelf for my son so that it's easy for him to shoot. Remember, he's only 4 years old, so I'm gonna build a very unique arrow shelf that kind of acts as a arrow holder more than an arrow shelf. I'd recommend doing this if the bow is for a young child or a beginner archer. The downside to this is it could lead to bad form and pinching the bowstring in the future. But for now, in beginners, the goal is just to get them to enjoy it. I will cover this arrow shelf adjustment in a minute, but first let's shape the handle. Shaping the handle is a lot about making it feel the way you want it to feel. Here, I'm guessing on how it'll feel for a tiny little hand, but no sharp edges, nice and curved. Generally feels better. With the sight window carved in, I'm going to add a little arrow shelf adjustment. This is just a little piece of wood that's gonna keep the arrow from falling off of the shelf. The idea is that it would just stick up about the height of the arrow. You don't want it taller than that because then the fletchings will hit it, and we wanna avoid that. I'm gluing it on like we did the tip overlays, and then I'll just smooth it into the bow to make it one. The bow bends properly, it's the right draw weight, and the handle shaped. So we finish with sanding everything smooth, double checking my draw weight, and then it's time to apply a finish. But before applying a finish, I forgot to film writing the information on the bow that you want, if you want any. I normally write the poundage of the bow, or the draw weight, or who it's for, or I'll do a little signature. Next, I make a bowstring. You could use paracord or all sorts of things for bowstrings. Additionally, links in the description to the bowstrings I recommend most. With that said, it all depends what you want the bow for. A good bowstring will elevate a bow dramatically. Here's the completed youth bow. I think it looks awesome. The finishing touches I did is I added some felt as an arrow shelf so that the arrow would slide nice, quietly, and smoothly. Additionally, I added a couple nocking points. Besides that, the bow's ready to shoot. Currently, I've measured the draw weight at 15 inches, but it can draw back to about 20, 22 inches. That's just pretty slick. I like how the fingertip overlay turned out. I think it adds a lot of character. This arrow shelf is so smooth, and it works out just as I wanted. And then the tip overlays tie it all together. I finished it with a spray polyurethane. I think it turned out great. The arrows match the bow nicely. So I asked Fletch to come shoot the bow and be in the video, and he said he didn't want to. So I'm not gonna force him. he'll come around to shoot this bow at some point. I think it's a pretty cool one. And with that, sorry, all you get is me. Have a great day. I'll see you later.